petrified, but just the excitement of him not understanding what it means. He wanted to show us, I care about you.
For decades, Jermaine Jackson, the once outspoken but emotionally guarded brother of the Jackson dynasty, remained silent about his time with Michael Jackson. Now, Jermaine has finally spoken out, and his revelations have sparked heated debates among fans who are furious over what they're hearing.
The Jackson 5 is what gave Michael and Janet the platform to do what they did.
Michael Jackson was not what everyone thought, Jermaine claims. But why has he chosen to break his silence now? And what does this mean for Michael's untouchable legacy? The answers are astounding.
Michael, like anybody else, it blows up, but sometimes they get on my nerves, I get on their nerves.
They were brothers by blood, but in the world of music, they quickly became rivals by ambition. Most fans only saw the polished performances, the bright smiles, and the matching outfits. But underneath the fame and synchronized dance moves, the Jackson family was a storm waiting to explode. And when the lightning finally struck, it was Jermaine who stood in the middle of it. What he did behind the scenes didn't just change the family dynamic, it created a silent war that never fully ended. In the 1960s, the Jackson brothers were the dream team. Raised in a small house in Gary, Indiana, their father Joe Jackson pushed them hard. Joe didn't just want a good band, he wanted superstardom. He ruled the household with discipline, training the boys like athletes. Every mistake was corrected. Every note, every spin, every step had to be perfect. And somehow, it worked. By the time they were discovered by Motown, the Jackson 5 were already performing with the precision of grown professionals. At first, it was Jermaine who held the spotlight. He had the charm, the voice, and the confidence to front the group. But it didn't take long for Michael, the youngest, to shine brighter. Even as a child, he had something different. That voice, it was electric. And while the crowd couldn't get enough of Michael, Jermaine was left watching his little brother become the center of attention. The shift was subtle at first, then it became obvious. By the early 70s, Michael wasn't just the cute kid brother anymore. He was the star. And with every tour, every album, and every interview, that spotlight grew hotter. Behind the scenes, there were whispers. Was Jermaine jealous? They were still brothers, still bound by the Jackson name. That was until 1975 when the choice came that split everything wide open. Motown had been the Jackson 5's home since the beginning, but things were changing. The boys wanted more control over their music. They were tired of singing songs written for them, tired of having their creativity locked down. Just when the family had the chance to step into a new chapter together, Jermaine chose to stay in the past. And he wasn't just replaced, he was removed. The group brought in their younger brother Randy to fill Jermaine's spot. That wasn't just a shift, that was a statement. What followed was years of distance. Jermaine tried to launch his solo career under Motown. He had some moderate hits, but nothing compared to what Michael was about to unleash. Meanwhile, Michael's solo rise was unstoppable. Off the Wall exploded in 1979. Thriller came 3 years later and broke every record in sight. Michael had become a one-man global phenomenon, and Jermaine couldn't keep up. Behind closed doors, there were efforts to mend the relationship. Jermaine gave interviews over the years saying he loved his brother, but the cracks were visible. And according to people close to the family, Michael never fully trusted him again. This wasn't just about music or business anymore. It was about identity. Jermaine had once believed he would be the frontman, that he would carry the family legacy. But Michael had taken that role and turned it into something so massive that nobody else could even compare. And for Jermaine, that reality hurt. Even during Michael's later years, when he became more private and more suspicious of the people around him, Jermaine tried to reconnect. But Michael kept his circle small. He started to cut off people he once loved, and by the time he passed in 2009, many family members, including Jermaine, were left with questions they'd never get to ask. But one thing is clear, the Jackson family never truly recovered from that split in 1975. And the moment Jermaine chose loyalty to Motown over unity with his brothers was the spark that lit a fire still smoldering today. But that was only the beginning. As Michael soared, Jermaine watched from the ground, fuming, forgotten, and fed up. In the beginning, Jermaine was confident that his solo path would shine. When he stayed with Motown in 1975, it wasn't just about business. He believed he could carry his own name, step out of Michael's growing shadow, and claim a spotlight of his own. While Jermaine was pushing for modest radio play, Michael was smashing every barrier in the industry. When Michael moonwalked across the Motown 25 stage in 1983, the world stopped, but Jermaine kept watching. By the mid-80s, the Jackson name had one clear face. Michael wasn't just famous, he was untouchable. The media crowned him the king of pop. People screamed his name before he even stepped on stage. Meanwhile, Jermaine's projects came and went with little fanfare. The music industry had made its choice, and Jermaine knew it. The growing divide wasn't just professional, it became personal. Jermaine began to feel pushed aside, excluded from the empire his own family helped build. The resentment kept growing. It all boiled over in 1991. That year, Jermaine released a song called "Word to the Bad." On the surface, it was just another R&B single, but the lyrics were sharp, direct, and impossible to ignore. One line especially stood out: "Once you were made, you changed your shade." The implication was brutal. Jermaine was calling out Michael's appearance, his identity, his very sense of self. Fans were stunned. The public had never heard a Jackson family member speak this aggressively against Michael. The Jackson family tried to put out the fire. Pressure was put on Jermaine to tone it down. Eventually, a second version of the track was released with some of the more offensive lyrics cut out, but the original had already done its damage. What pushed Jermaine to write that song remains debated. Was it frustration? Was it heartbreak? Or was it something even deeper? Whatever it was, it left a scar. And years later, when Jermaine began opening up about Michael's personal life again, including details the public never knew, people started asking the same question: why now? And what else is he finally ready to expose? For years, fans believed they knew everything about Michael Jackson's love life, but Jermaine cracked the surface, and what he revealed suggests there was someone none of us knew about. A woman who, according to Jermaine, vanished from Michael's life without warning, and the scars she left behind never healed. He says Michael loved her. Jermaine describes her as private, grounded, someone who understood Michael's world. She didn't need cameras or headlines. She wasn't trying to be part of the brand. She just saw him for who he really was. Jermaine says he was just a man in love. It was rare, and it didn't last long, because one day she was gone. According to Jermaine, Michael never talked about her openly again, but he never forgot her either. Jermaine believes she left such a deep scar that it shaped Michael's music for years to come, specifically Billie Jean and Dirty Diana. After all these years, he mentioned her for a reason, maybe guilt, maybe reflection, or maybe, finally, to tell the world that behind the legend was a man who had his heart broken in silence. But that was just one piece of the emotional puzzle, because Michael's love life wasn't just private, it was complicated, and the more you uncover, the more twisted the story becomes. For most of his life, Michael Jackson sang about love, but never seemed to hold on to it. Fans saw the glamorous performances, but behind the lyrics and the camera flashes, Michael's relationships were far more complicated than anyone realized. Michael never had a normal teenage life. From a young age, he lived under the control of his father and the pressure of the spotlight. There was no privacy, no room to figure out who he was. Fame surrounded him like a cage, and inside that cage, real relationships were almost impossible. His first real connection was with actress Tatum O'Neal. He often called her his first love. They met when they were both teenagers. Michael described feeling excited and hopeful when he was around her, but Tatum later said their relationship never became physical. Then came Brooke Shields. The two became incredibly close in the early 1980s, appearing together at awards shows. Their bond was deep, and rumors flew that they were dating. Michael openly said he loved Brooke. She was beautiful, successful, and kind. But according to her, their connection was emotional, not romantic. They cared about each other deeply, but they weren't in love. Even though both relationships were non-physical, they gave Michael a sense of connection, but they also showed how hard it was for him to take those feelings further. Fame had made him cautious. His trust was fragile. That changed when Lisa Marie Presley entered the picture. Their relationship stunned the world. Michael and the daughter of Elvis Presley? No one saw it coming. At first, people thought it was a publicity stunt, a distraction from Michael's growing legal troubles. But Lisa Marie insisted it was real. She said they bonded over shared trauma, childhood fame, and the struggle of constantly being misunderstood. Behind closed doors, she said Michael was affectionate, intense, and complicated. He wanted love, but he also wanted control. Lisa Marie revealed that their marriage had moments of real passion, but was also full of emotional walls. She said he was constantly surrounded by people who made it hard to reach him. In the end, she couldn't break through. Their divorce came quickly, just under 2 years after they married. Lisa Marie said she tried to help him, but he was already too deep into his own world, and she couldn't compete with that. After the split, Michael barely spoke about her again. Debbie was a nurse who had helped treat Michael's skin condition for years. They weren't in love in the traditional sense. Even Debbie admitted that their marriage was based on an agreement she would help him have children, and he would raise them. It wasn't romance. It was partnership. She gave birth to 2 of his children, Prince and Paris. And when they divorced, she handed him full custody. Because for Michael, love was always complicated. Too many expectations, and too much to lose. The closer someone got, the harder it became to hold on to them. And that wasn't just sad, it was devastating. But what came next left even his closest people shocked. Before the world called him the king of pop, before he sold out stadiums and changed music history, Michael Jackson was just a boy with a dream and a woman he couldn't stop looking up to. That woman was Diana Ross. She wasn't just a mentor. She wasn't just a friend. She might have been the one person Michael loved more than anyone else. They met in the late 1960s when Michael was barely a teenager. The Jackson 5 had just signed to Motown, and Diana Ross was already a legend. She was glamorous, powerful, and confident, everything Michael wasn't at the time. But more than that, she was kind to him. She saw something in him, and Michael never forgot it. Their connection was instant. It didn't matter that she was years older. At first, it looked like admiration, a young star learning from someone who had already made it. But as time passed, that bond deepened. Michael didn't just admire Diana, he idolized her. He studied the way she spoke, dressed, and carried herself in public. And over time, people around them started to notice something else. This wasn't just about music, this was emotional. When he moved out of the Jackson family home, he moved in with Diana Ross. She let him stay with her for months, maybe longer. It wasn't just generosity, it was trust. And for Michael, who was already starting to feel the pressures of early fame, that trust meant everything. During those years, she became more than a friend or mentor. She was a safe space. And the feelings Michael had for her, whether spoken or not, were obvious to those paying attention. Jermaine Jackson, who's always been tight-lipped about the Diana situation, finally said Michael's heart was always tied to someone from the beginning, someone who shaped him emotionally, someone he never stopped caring about. There's been speculation for years that Jermaine also had feelings for Diana at one point. In the early Motown days, she was around all the brothers. And Jermaine, like Michael, was drawn to her. That could have added another layer of tension between the two, a hidden rivalry, not just over fame, but over love. But what's clear is that she had an unshakable grip on his heart. And Diana? She spoke of Michael with deep affection, but she always kept a careful boundary. She called him my baby, but her tone wasn't cold. It was loving. Whatever they shared, public or private, it never left them. And Jermaine's latest remarks have only reignited the conversation. Was she more than just a role model? Did Michael carry a lifelong love for someone who never quite returned it in the way he hoped? The truth is buried with them, but what's undeniable is that Diana Ross wasn't just another celebrity in Michael's orbit. She was his anchor, maybe even his emotional first love. And while she gave him guidance, warmth, and early protection, there were others who gave him the exact opposite. Because not every woman in Michael's life was gentle. Some were dangerous. Some crossed lines, and one nearly changed everything. Fame came fast for the Jacksons, but what followed came even faster. And it wasn't just music executives or adoring fans knocking on their door. There was another side of fame they weren't prepared for, a side that looked like love but felt like danger. Jermaine Jackson has finally admitted what many suspected. In the early 70s, the Jackson 5 became teen idols overnight. Girls screamed so loud during their concerts, the band couldn't hear their own instruments. Fan mail flooded Motown daily. But behind that frenzy were people who didn't know the meaning of boundaries. Jermaine revealed that even back then, when they were just teenagers, girls would sneak into hotel floors pretending to be maids or staff. At first, it seemed harmless. until it wasn't. Jermaine remembered one night when a girl broke into their backstage area pretending to be part of the crew. She wasn't older than 17, but she was bold. She wanted Michael. And when she didn't get what she wanted, she started screaming loud enough for security to hear. This was just the beginning. According to Jermaine, it became a pattern. Women began following them from city to city, hotels, airports, even family homes. They weren't fans anymore, they were stalkers. And while Jermaine admits that some of the brothers didn't mind the attention, Michael wasn't one of them. He didn't flirt, he didn't play around. He pulled away. Michael had always been quiet, shy, and emotionally guarded, but the groupie culture didn't respect that. It made him more anxious, more withdrawn, and eventually more paranoid. Jermaine said Michael would double-check hotel locks, refuse to answer room phones, and even wear disguises to exit buildings. He wasn't trying to be mysterious. He was trying to stay safe. The scariest part came when obsession turned violent. Michael received letters from a woman claiming to be the mother of his children that didn't exist. At first, it was just words. Then came photos. Then came threats. Michael turned that pain into music. Billie Jean wasn't just a song, it was a warning. Michael always claimed the lyrics were based on the lies women told about him and his brothers during their Jackson 5 days. Jermaine backed that up. He said multiple women claimed to have children with them, even when it was impossible. Michael was haunted by it. Dirty Diana pushed that narrative even further, a story about a woman who seduces and manipulates, breaking trust and boundaries. Many thought it was fiction, but Jermaine now says there was a real Diana, a woman who used lies and charm to get access. Michael was angry, not just at her, but at what she represented. A world full of people who saw him as a prize, not a person. Jermaine's confession sheds new light on why Michael lived the way he did, isolated, fearful, and emotionally detached. It wasn't about ego, it was about survival. But Michael's story of betrayal doesn't end there, because the most painful wounds didn't come from fans or strangers. They came from the people who knew him best. Michael Jackson didn't trust many people, and according to Jermaine Jackson, he had every reason not to. From the outside, Michael's life looked like a fantasy. Mansions, private planes, and millions of fans who loved him unconditionally. But behind those golden gates, Jermaine says, was a different reality. Michael was constantly looking over his shoulder, not just because of the media or obsessed fans, but because of people in his own circle, people he once trusted. Jermaine's recent statements have made one thing clear. The deepest wounds Michael carried weren't from outsiders, they were from those closest to him. Over time, he began to believe that many of the people around him were working against him, whispering lies, leaking stories, using his name for money, influence, or control. By the early 2000s, Michael was recording conversations inside his own home, phone calls, even family visits. He wanted to hear what was being said behind his back when he left the room. And according to Jermaine, what he uncovered broke his heart. People weren't just gossiping, they were stealing, taking advantage of his money, his fame, and his vulnerability. Some of the people Michael trusted the most were working against him for years. Personal assistants, advisors, even relatives. Some sold private stories to magazines. Others leaked medical information. A few even tried to gain control over his finances. One of the biggest shifts came when Michael stopped letting his own family into his inner circle. He believed someone from inside the family had betrayed him, maybe more than one person. The scariest part is that Michael knew he was losing control of his world. He wasn't delusional, he was trapped. Every time he tried to trust again, something happened to prove he shouldn't have. And over time, that kind of betrayal starts to change a person. Michael went from being playful and open to quiet and cold. He rarely laughed the way he used to, and the world never saw it. Either way, the message is clear. Michael wasn't paranoid. He was surrounded by betrayal. When Michael Jackson released Dirty Diana in 1988, it shocked fans. It wasn't the typical smooth ballad or uplifting anthem. This was something else. The sound was sharp, the lyrics were aggressive, the energy was electric and angry. People wondered, who was the real Diana? Michael always insisted the song wasn't about Diana Ross or Princess Diana. Even though both names were heavily linked to his life, he claimed it was inspired by experiences with obsessive fans. But Jermaine Jackson's recent comments have sparked fresh speculation that the woman behind the lyrics wasn't a symbol, but someone real. According to Jermaine, Michael wrote Dirty Diana during a deeply emotional chapter of his life. He was coming off years of global touring, endless media pressure, and the strain of personal betrayal. Jermaine says Michael had been burned badly, not by the press, not by his rivals, but by a woman who got too close. Jermaine hints that the woman started demanding things behind the scenes: money, influence, and recognition. Michael was horrified. The betrayal hit hard because it was personal. This wasn't a fan fantasy gone too far. This was someone he thought he could trust. And in the end, she used all of that against him. Jermaine said it made Michael feel emotionally disgusted, so he wrote Dirty Diana. Fans didn't know the backstory. All they saw was the video, the powerful guitar riffs, the high-pitched screams, and the fireworks. But behind that performance, the song was his way of taking control back. One of the most ironic moments in Michael's career happened during his bad tour. He was scheduled to perform at Wembley Stadium with Princess Diana in attendance. Out of respect for her, he initially pulled Dirty Diana from the set list. But when she found out, she told him something that stunned him. Dirty Diana was her favorite song. That version of the song became a defining moment, not just because of the audience, but because of what it meant to Michael personally. Jermaine believes that show represented Michael facing his trauma head-on, singing it not for applause, but for release. After Dirty Diana, Michael's music took a darker turn. Leave Me Alone, Morphine, Stranger in Moscow, all songs that echoed the theme of isolation and betrayal. Jermaine says this wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern, a spiral that started with one woman who broke his trust and never truly ended. Jermaine says Dirty Diana wasn't just a song. It was a warning that no matter how famous or how powerful you are, someone can still ruin everything. Jermaine Jackson has spent years defending his brother's legacy. He's given interviews, written books, and performed tearful tributes. But one thing he's never been able to deny: he waited too long to make things right. And by the time he tried, it was already too late. There are words Jermaine Jackson wishes he could take back. But more than that, there are words he never got to say. And when he finally reached for his brother, Michael was already gone. Their relationship had always been complicated. They started as bandmates, stood side by side through fame and family drama, and then slowly drifted into different worlds. Jermaine stayed behind at Motown when the rest of the Jacksons moved on. Michael rose to solo superstardom. At the time, Jermaine claimed it was a wake-up call. He felt Michael had changed, had grown distant from the family. That rift never fully closed. Jermaine says he tried in the years that followed to reach out. He left voicemails, sent messages through friends, even asked family members to pass along notes. But by then, Michael had built walls too high for anyone to climb. The hurt ran deep, not just from Jermaine, but from a lifetime of betrayal. And now, Jermaine admits, he was part of the problem. He tried to fix it. He says that in Michael's final years, he wanted to reconnect. There was one moment, though, that still haunts Jermaine, a visit that never happened. He had planned to stop by Neverland, but that day never came. When Jermaine got the call, he collapsed. Not just from grief, but from guilt. He hadn't seen Michael in person for months. He hadn't heard his voice. And now, the only thing left was silence. He hadn't apologized. He hadn't told him that despite the years of distance, he still saw him as his little brother, the one who danced on stage beside him, the one who trusted him before the world came knocking. At the memorial service, Jermaine performed Smile, one of Michael's favorite songs. The world watched. Millions cried, but Jermaine's voice cracked for a different reason. This wasn't just a tribute, it was a confession, his last chance to speak to the brother. He regrets the years spent in silence. He regrets the song that pushed Michael away. He regrets believing there would always be time to make it right. Jermaine says Michael died holding on to secrets. Secrets about the people who used him, about the woman he loved and lost, about the things he never told anyone, not even family. And now, Jermaine's the one left holding the weight of it all. But there's one thing he made clear. Michael wasn't unreachable, he wasn't cold, he was hurt. And when the people he thought would protect him disappeared, he shut the door. And Jermaine, like many others, waited on the outside too long. Because when Michael left, he didn't just take his music, he took the truth. And Jermaine knows there's a difference between losing someone and knowing you had a chance to make things right and missed it. But even with the door closed forever, Jermaine left us with one final warning, a cryptic, emotional message, something he said the world wasn't ready to hear, and what he said next might change how we remember Michael Jackson forever. In the quiet aftermath of decades of fame, scandal, and silence, Jermaine Jackson is finally speaking out, but what he's saying isn't just shocking, it's unsettling, because buried inside his recent interviews is something much more than a family reflection. It's a warning, a final message from someone who lived close to the legend and now claims the public has only seen the surface of who Michael Jackson really was. Jermaine didn't shout it. He didn't offer a dramatic speech. Instead, it was one sentence, soft, almost whispered, but it sent chills through the room. If the world knew what Michael went through, they wouldn't judge him. They'd cry for him. At first, it sounded like grief, but the more Jermaine spoke, the clearer it became. This wasn't just emotion, it was something else, something heavier. He was hinting at secrets, truths Michael carried until the end. Truths Jermaine says the public was never meant to know. According to Jermaine, Michael spent the final years of his life weighed down by more than stress or fame. He was burdened by the knowledge that people around him, some trusted, some powerful, had taken advantage of him in ways the public still doesn't understand. And the scariest part? Jermaine says most of those people are still alive. He says Michael kept secrets not to protect himself, but to protect others, family, friends, even fans. Jermaine insists that Michael carried pain too dangerous to speak aloud, pain tied to betrayal, manipulation, and emotional abuse, not from strangers, but from people he once loved. In one moment, Jermaine said something that truly left people speechless. "Michael told me things I'll never repeat. No further explanation, no clues. Just that." And the silence after he said it said everything. These weren't just personal details. They were things, Jermaine suggests, that could change the way we see everything. The fame, the controversies, the erratic behavior, even his death. According to Jermaine, Michael's story was carefully controlled by others. What the public saw was a version filtered through power, fear, and reputation management. And when asked why he was coming forward now, after so many years, Jermaine didn't flinch. "Because if I don't speak now, someone else will, and they'll get it wrong." He didn't accuse, he didn't attack, but the message was unmistakable. The story of Michael Jackson is not over, and most of us have been looking at it through a lens designed by people who never truly had his best interest at heart. There's a deep sadness in the way Jermaine talks about his brother, not just because Michael is gone, but because the man behind the music never got to be fully understood. He was praised, adored, and deified, but never truly known. And that, Jermaine says, is the real tragedy. Michael's music told the truth. You just had to listen close enough. "Stranger in Moscow," "Leave Me Alone," "They Don't Care About Us." These weren't just songs. They were coded confessions. Emotional breadcrumbs leading back to a man screaming to be heard while the world was too busy watching him dance. According to Jermaine, Michael's biggest fear wasn't the public turning against him. It was dying without ever being believed. And in the end, that's exactly what happened. Even after his passing, debates still rage about his character, his life, and his choices. Jermaine insists that if people knew the full truth, those conversations wouldn't exist. Because what Michael endured, he says, would have destroyed most people. And yet, Michael kept performing, kept smiling, kept creating. Not because he was at peace, but because music was the only place he could speak freely. It was his only form of control in a life where nearly everything else had been taken from him. Jermaine's final comments don't just leave you thinking, they leave you unsettled. Because if Michael did share something truly devastating with his brother, and Jermaine is choosing to keep that secret, the world may never know what really happened behind the curtain. Maybe Jermaine's silence is loyalty, or maybe it's fear. Either way, it raises the same question. How much do we really know about the man who gave us decades of magic, yet died feeling more alone than ever? And Jermaine isn't the only one holding back. Others in the Jackson circle have hinted at untold stories, conversations not captured on tape, warnings ignored, promises broken. The puzzle of Michael's life is full of missing pieces, and now, one of the last people who saw him clearly is telling us the edges of that truth, but stopping just before it becomes complete. Jermaine ended his interview with a chilling pause. He looked down, collected his thoughts, then simply said, "Some things were never meant for the world to know." It was a sentence that echoed louder than anything else. Because if that's true, if Michael's real story is still locked away in the memories of a few silent witnesses, then what we know today is only half the truth. And when the full picture finally comes to light, it might not just change how we remember Michael Jackson, it might break us. Michael Jackson gave the world his voice, his soul, and his childhood, and in return, he got the spotlight. But behind that light was darkness the world never fully saw. Jermaine's revelations didn't just reopen old wounds, they exposed how little we ever truly knew, from secret heartbreaks to public betrayals, from love songs masking pain to final warnings whispered too late. Michael's story is far more human than anyone ever imagined, and maybe that's the saddest part. Because behind the icon was a man constantly searching for peace and never quite finding it. As Jermaine said, the truth might still be buried, and when it finally surfaces, it won't rewrite history. It'll reveal how far off we were from the beginning. What do you think the world still doesn't know about Michael Jackson? And why did Jermaine choose not to reveal them? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe for further updates and click the next video on screen now, where we uncover another interesting story.